and that is, of course, Bitfarms. Bitfarms was up huge today, by the way. I think it closed up like 15% or something like that. So welcome news, and we'll explain exactly why it went up huge today. But the big news before we get to that is this whole like thing that Bitfarms has ongoing with Riot, right? So in case you guys are not filled in on the news, basically what happened was Riot, another Bitcoin miner, was trying to buy Bitfarms, and Bitfarms didn't want to sell to Riot, and Riot is trying to like attempt a hostile takeover. At least that's what it appears to be the case, where they keep on stacking Bitfarms shares and trying to like, they're also trying to push for like board changes and all this stuff. They're trying to get people appointed to the board. That Bitfarms' current board doesn't want like new people. They're trying to push for these new governance changes. So basically, we got an update on this news quite recently this week, which is Bitfarms adopting a poison pill, or rather, this is officially called a shareholders' rights plan. So the press release was a bit complicated, right? So I have a screenshot of the press release right here. I'm not going to go through like the details of this because, to be honest, I didn't fully understand 100% of this either. But from what I do understand, what is going on here is that because Bitfarms is trying to fight off this hostile takeover from Riot, Riot needs to stack a certain percentage of shares before they're able to like actually take over this company, take over Bitfarms. So I've heard that Canadian laws require 66%, but some people are like, no, like it's the same as the US. It requires only 51%. But regardless, it like Riot's not close to that yet. But they're trying to get to that point, right? So regardless of whether it's 51 or 66%, they're continuing to stack shares. And in fact, today we got the news that they actually got up to 14.0%. So this news was just released right before we started this show. They now own 14.0% of Bitfarms. So apparently this poison pill hasn't stopped them from acquiring more Bitfarms. But first of all, I'm getting ahead of myself. What is this poison pill, right? So this poison pill, basically the idea is that you want to prevent any singular entity from accumulating a large percentage of the shares. So they set the threshold to 15%, where if a company, Riot or any other company for that matter, if they get up to 15% or more, Bitfarms can issue more shares and like give those new shares to everyone besides the company that owns 15%. So if you think about practically how this would work, is that pretend you're Riot and you're trying to stack 51% of Bitfarms so that you can do a hostile takeover. Well, you buy, and then you get to 15%. And then all of a sudden, the company Bitfarms issues more shares to everyone besides you. So it's kind of like they're diluting only you. And it's going to be progressively harder and harder for you to stack more shares to gain like a percentage increase in the amount of shares you own of Bitfarms. So basically, that's what it means, right? So you can get up to 15%, but if you try to buy more shares, you're going to have a lot more issues, and you're going to get diluted, and you're going to have to spend ever more amounts of money to accumulate more shares. So this is a tactic that was, if you guys recall, used in the Twitter acquisition. So Elon Musk wanted to buy Twitter, and then Twitter at first didn't want to sell it to him. So they were talking about adopting potentially a similar plan like this called the poison pill, right? And that would prevent Elon Musk from buying it. But that saga unfolded a lot differently in the end.
Yeah, because it was like mid-story too. I was getting invested. I'm like, oh shit, dilution? This is some Social Network shit. I was gonna mention that. It reminds me of like that one scene in the Social Network. I'm like, dang, yo.
The one guy getting diluted.
Yeah,
It's gonna be like I'm not part of Facebook.
He's like, Mark, you better lawyer up because I'm coming for everything.
And he's just gone. Is he coming back? Power went out. I guess I should pick up where I left off, but I have no idea where I left off. Literally, I was in the middle of a sentence and then everything just goes black. Like you guys probably didn't see it because like I just froze for you guys, right? But like on my end, it was like I was just talking and then like everything goes black.
Yeah. I was just like, I was like, Andy did not lose internet. Andy just died. Like,
yeah, no,
his computer is off.
I was like, what is happening right now? Like, what? And this is like Zillennial money history. Like, what is happening?
No, because it started raining and I didn't think too much of it, and I was like, I hope the noise doesn't get into the recording, and then like it just got super bad all of a sudden. But yeah, anyways, could you guys jog my memory as to exactly where I was?
You were explaining the Bitfarms poison pill and the dilution aspect and stuff like that.
I remember. Yeah, you mentioned like 15%, and then they're diluting after 15%, and then
everyone gets diluted, but Riot. Sorry, no, Riot gets diluted, and everyone else doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I think that's it. Like, I was done explaining the poison pill, so like that's the way that it works, right? For those audience members who are welcome back, you know, or I guess I should say welcome back to myself because you guys probably never left, and I was the one that left. But yeah, anyway, so let's jump back right into it. So yeah, anyway, so Bitfarms has this poison pill thing, and then you would think that Riot would start backing off, right? Because it's like you can never accumulate more than like 15% feasibly in that case once the poison pill is implemented, because every time you try, you'll just get diluted until you get back down to 15%, right? But it hasn't stopped Riot because, as I said earlier in the show, they went up back. They kept on buying, and then now they're up to 14.0% ownership of Bitfarms as a whole. Yeah, with regards to Bitfarms' response to this and why they adopted this poison pill and why like they didn't want Riot to buy them out, Bitfarms released this statement actually. So you guys scroll to the second or third photo on the docket. Basically, it's like, you know, we're committed to maximizing shareholder value, and we don't believe that Riot acquiring us will be maximizing shareholder value, which I don't know, to me it seems perfectly reasonable, right? Yeah, it just says plainly like they're not holding back, because like when they released their initial statement previously, they were like, oh yeah, no, we don't believe that this is like a good offer. And then right here on Twitter, they just didn't hold back. They went like full savage mode. It's like Riot's interests are not aligned with Bitfarm shareholders, and their attacks are efforts to push their low ball bid. So yeah, basically they went like full Wendy's Twitter account on Riot. So yeah, anyways, that's pretty much all I had for this, like with regards to this poison pill. We do have a second part to this story where Bitfarms announced an expansion, but I think we can leave that part for a little bit later. But first, I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on what you think of this poison pill, what you think Riot is going to do, and like what's the end game for Riot, right? Like what's the end game here? Because they keep stacking shares and they're getting up to that 15% now, which they're at risk of triggering the poison pill if they're going to stack any more shares. So like, do you think they'll get up to like, you know, 14.9 maybe, and then what, right? Like what's their end game? What do you guys think?
Yeah, so I think I'm not really sure what Riot's playing at. Like I think maybe it's just trying to acquire Bitfarm shares at a low price. I feel like now that the poison pill has been implemented, I think that it's going to be pretty difficult for them to take over Bitfarms using a hostile takeover, particularly with the amount of cash reserves and cash equivalents that Riot has. And especially when you consider the fact that if Riot starts trying to buy out Bitfarms, they're going to have to deploy a lot of that cash reserves into that attempt, and the potential for that to backfire is a much higher with the hostile poison pill being implemented. So I think from that perspective, it doesn't really make a lot of sense for Riot to keep pursuing beyond the 14.9 mark because of the risk to their own shareholders. So if they're trying to maximize shareholder value for Riot shareholders, acquiring Bitfarms at like a 90% profit amount, not profit amount, like premium, which will be effectively what they'll end up doing, that or more, is going to, okay, maybe I'm exaggerating a little with the 90, but like they're going to be acquiring it for a significant premium. They're not getting a discount on it anymore. And even with the discount that they were attempting to get, that was still a substantial amount of money for Riot to come up with to acquire Bitfarms in the first place. So even if they try to do it using this method, I think that the risk to their own shareholders compared to just populating their Corsica location and just buying miners and paying attention to their own backyard instead of looking at Bitfarms' backyard. Like it's kind of like Riot is sitting there with a desert in its backyard, and then it's looking over the fence at Bitfarms, which has got like some children's toys strewn around, but besides that is fine. And they're just like, oh, the management's not doing a good job. Well, their scenarios, their whole place is like, a complete desert. Everything's terrible. It's just like, I think that if they're trying to actually maximize things for their own shareholders, pursuing this Bitfarms actual acquisition is a complete is not very intelligent. I think that they can get the 14.9%, and then if they want to hold that and then sell the shares when they've made a profit, that's like not the worst plan for Riot shareholders. But if they keep trying to pursue over the 14.9 into a 15, starting that poison pill, I think that they will find very quickly that they will be paying a lot more money than they want to be paying for Bitfarms. And that factor will probably cause some issues shareholder wise. So I think that if they're smart, their management won't continue pursuing this past 14.9, because I think that if I were a shareholder of Riot and they were pursuing this acquisition that was going to be most likely costing me a lot of money, I would be looking to change that management team if I was a shareholder. So I think in that regard, I think that hopefully they have the foresight to not continue after the 14.9, but we'll have to see what Riot actually ends up doing. I think that, and just to round this off, I think that Bitfarms enacting the poison pill is actually good, and the reason for that is that while I know that I could be diluted, I think that being acquired by Riot at a significant discount would cost a lot more than the risk of some dilution being kicked into the mix, right? And I think that in that regard, it's not like they can't at a later date do a reverse stock split or whatever it is, stock merger to reduce the number of shares or whatever, if they need to. Not that it really matters at the end of the day how many shares there are, as long as your position size hasn't been reduced. But I think that in that regard, I think that Bitfarms needed to protect itself, and I think that Riot is acting in bad faith by undervaluing Bitfarms and attacking their operations via this purchasing of shares and their continued criticism of the leadership. And it's not to say that Bitfarms doesn't have things to be criticized on. It's just that the way that Riot's going about it particularly when Riot's bed is not made at home. It just seems a bit rich.
My bed is not made at home either, but I am not Bitfarms or Riot, although I do own shares in Bitfarms and not Riot. Yeah, anyways, Dom, you want to provide your thoughts? What do you think of this whole poison pill thing? What do you think Riot's end game is?
Yeah, as for like the poison pill thing, I guess it's a good way to combat with like Riot's like pressurized push. Like I think um if they want to be like a part of themselves, like independently, I guess this is not a bad idea. Because if I was in Riot's shoes, it wouldn't make any sense to go past that 15% threshold because, like, why would you? What's the point? Because after 15%, dilution happens, and then that's just no benefit to Riot in itself. So I'm sure they're gonna try to find an alternative method, but I think this poison pill is good for now. And yeah, I'll just say like we'll wait and see what happens. But as for right now, for the price of Bitfarms, it's really nice for all of us. So hope that keeps rising. So yeah, I'll say that.
Yeah, actually, regarding the price of Bitfarms, the one question that came to mind was, do you think that if Riot was denied this opportunity to acquire Bitfarms, do you think that they will dump all their shares in anger? Because they do own 14% of the company now, right? And that's a lot of shares if they were to try and dump them all at once. And that could be a big negative catalyst for us as Bitfarm shareholders. Which, yeah, like Tristan, what do you think about that? Let me just toss the question to you first.
Yeah, so I think that they would be really stupid to do that. And that's not just like because I don't want them to do that. Because obviously I don't want them to do that because dumping their shares and tanking the stock price would be, not good for my position that I have in Bitfarms as I am a shareholder of Bitfarms. But really what it comes down to is that if Riot wants to be maximizing value for shareholders, their own shareholders, they should be trying to get as much of a profit on this as possible. And if they dump all their shares at all at once, the likelihood that they tank the stock beyond where they are profitable on their selling becomes a lot higher. So if I were Riot, I would probably reduce the size of my position, or based on what they seem to be doing, maybe acquire up to that 14.9 and try and place my own board members onto their board in order to facilitate an acquisition at a later date, which I think is actually what they're going to try and do. So if I were them, I wouldn't be looking to sell the shares all at once. If I was looking to sell the shares, it would be a slow, like a few, like a couple million here and there kind of deal, rather than like the entire position or a large amount of the position. I'd be looking to kind of sell it as it goes up, and then funnel that money back into my own company. That being said, it seems that Riot seems to like sitting on cash and not invest that money into their own company. So maybe they'll just hang out and hold the shares and sell them at a high point. Maybe they'll dump it. I would say that the management at Riot seems a little bit petty, it seems to me, because they seem to be targeting Bitfarms pretty aggressively. And I don't think that it's past their pettiness to ignore the shareholder value and dump the shares for a massive amount, for a massive decrease in Bitfarms value. Again, we'll have to kind of see what happens, but if I were them, I would slow sell them.
I mean, if you watched previous episodes of this show, I think I've already kind of made my opinion pretty clear on this whole situation. But in my opinion, I think what's happening here between Riot and Bitfarms is Riot is, or especially the CEO of Riot, Jason Les, he's a professional poker player. So I think he's kind of viewing this as a whole game of poker, right? It's like who blinks first. So I think he did some calculations in his head and figured out that no matter what happens, he still sort of wins, right? So if he's able to buy Bitfarms at $2.30 US per share. Obviously, that's going to be a huge win for him. If he's not able to, then he can get up to 14.9% of Bitfarms, which looks like he's about to hit that 14.9 very soon, which like part of the reason I think why Bitfarms stock went up today was because Riot is still buying, right? So not only are they not selling, they're still in the process of buying more shares. So I think they will get up to that 14.9%. And then after that, it's like, you know, Bitfarms is by all metrics that like Bitcoin mining companies are measured at. Bitfarms is probably at like the lowish undervalued point. Again, not financial advice, but this is just, you know, some statistics I've seen, which, you know, given that Riot was buying all of their shares at around 230 or, you know, maybe a slightly above that, I think that they did the calculation that it was undervalued. So their stake in Bitfarms, 14 or 15%, whatever it ends up being, is going to be worth a lot more in the future. So they still win, right? So whether they are able to acquire Bitfarms or not able to, they win either way. So I think that that's kind of the end game. And I think that, I mean, I can't speak for Riot, obviously, because I'm not in the head of the CEO. But if I was the CEO of Riot, I would hold on to Bitfarms, those shares, because it's going to be accretive to Riot shareholders as well when Bitfarms runs up now, right? So that's just kind of my opinion. I think that this story is kind of maybe going to fizzle out, right? So Riot's going to get up to that 14.9%, and then they're probably just going to hold, and they're going to, you know, bitch and whine about not being able to like buy Bitfarms. But yeah, this poison pill, I think essentially it sabotages all the plans that Riot has at ever acquiring Bitfarms at the price that they wanted to. So anyways, Dom, do you have anything more to add, or shall we move on to the second part of this story? Maybe somewhat related to what we were talking about with Riot. So I mentioned that earlier that Riot is still in the process of buying more Bitfarms shares, and I think that Bitfarms is using this opportunity to tap their ATM, right? So in case you guys forget how an ATM is supposed to work, not an automatic teller machine, but an at the market equity program, which is a program that allows Bitfarms to issue more shares. It's kind of like an ATM in real life, right? It prints money these days because all the shares that they're printing, they're just selling to Riot, who's buying them up. And I think that Bitfarms has made a lot of money by tapping their ATM and selling the shares to Riot, who's gobbling them up, and then they're using this money that they earn from their ATM to fund expansion, which is accretive to shareholder value, right? And I think that that's why people kind of are not maybe clear-headed towards an ATM at first, because it's like, oh, I hate dilution. It's dilution. Yes, it is dilution, but if they are using the money to add to more expansion, then it could be accretive to shareholders, even if you get diluted.